These are quail that just hatched. They're actually still hatching out, some of them. And you can see the ones that have already hatched haven't even dried off, so they're, very, very young. I'm actually surprised this many have already hatched out, and we still got 24 hours for normal hatch rate, and we've already got this many, so considering the rough ride they had in the mail as eggs, I couldn't be happier with, especially this early on. It's the first time that we're trying quail. We usually do chickens, so I actually read up on how the difference was between quail and chickens, anything that you might need to do differently in terms of the brooder or the incubator, how to raise them. I actually found that there's quite a bit different. Everyone has always told me, just locally around here, that if you can get past the first 2 weeks of quail, then they're pretty hardy, but the first 2 weeks they've got a lot of stuff that can go wrong. So I was looking into, well, why is that? And one of the biggest things I found was apparently they're really easily prone to aspiration, where they basically inhale and choke on water when they're really young. And you actually have to create your own specialized water dispenser, or possibly use a dripper. We have a quail water dispenser that we got, and what I have heard to do is either put pebbles or something that's not big enough for not small enough for them to swallow, but to where it makes the water not as deep, and where it makes it really hard that they would get too much water in their mouth or in their nose or something. So we're going to do that. They also say take the incubator to the brooder and pick them out one by one, because they're so fragile that you can't do what you might want to do with chickens, which is to carry them in your hand to the brooder from the incubator, or carry more than one in your hand at a time even. So I'm gonna do that. There has to be a reason why they recommended that, so I'm sure there's something to it. I'm going to do everything that I can to get these guys as strong as they can be in the first 2 weeks. Another thing that I heard was that they can catch a lot of colds from other poultry that, doesn't hurt other poultry at all, but could be deadly to them. So we do have one mild chicken cold that kind of circulates. It came from, sadly, a store outlet, instead of getting our chickens from a hatchery. One time we got them from day-old's store outlet, in those little bins, and it seemed easy, but it really wasn't, because they came with that cold, and then it's almost impossible to get rid of once it's here. So in order to protect them against that, any babies, whether it be chickens or quail or anything, just in case, since I don't know if this is something the quail can catch, I'm going to treat them like I would baby chickens. I'm going to give them immune supplements that are safe for quail, and I'm also they're all natural, they're herbal, but they're also designed specifically in the correct dose for quail. And then I'm also going to give them that antibody treatment that I talked about in the other video, just as a precautionary thing. Now, I do understand that our chickens are chickens. This is our first batch of quail, so we don't have any quail that have caught the cold and have the antibodies. They'd be getting the antibodies from a chicken egg. But that being said, a lot of the antibodies science and things has shown that it can still have an effect, even if it's a different species. They're not useless antibodies just because it's a different species. So they'll still be getting some benefit from that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix in just a little bit of that egg yolk from the chickens that have already lived through it and are now laying. And I'm going to mix that in their food for the first week or so, week and a half. And I'm also going to give them that supplement for the first probably 2.5 weeks. And now, I've always been a fan of free range, and I know people say you can't really do that with quail unless you have a giant aviary, which we don't have. We just have a fence, and even our fence, if you've seen some of the other videos, our fence is usually open during the day. I would feel bad clipping their wings, to try and free range them like some people do, because then they can't fly away from predators, and it just seems kind of wrong for a bird that flies to do that. So it's kind of different for a chicken. The only thing it's going to prevent a chicken from doing is hopping too high over the fence or hopping somewhere they're not supposed to. But for a bird that can actually kind of fly, that's a little different. They would be missing out on life because you'd be taking away their actual flight, and a chicken never, clipped wings or not, never really has true flight. But for quail, it's a safety thing. I mean, that's their main. They're so small compared to chickens. Hawks can carry them off so easily. Even small hawks and falcons and things can just pick them up and carry them off, even when they're adults. So, flight is one of their main defenses. If they don't have that, they may not be fast enough to get away from predators. So, the last free-ranging experiment that I did was whether or not you can free-range Cornish cross chickens. Most people said that you can't do it simply because their health is so poor. But what I found is if you feed them the right food, if they don't grow too fast, if you give them enough exercise and room, their health is just as good as any other chicken. The problem is that their muscle mass makes them really slow compared to other chickens. And they would get eaten by predators when I free-ranged them a lot more than my other chickens would. But as far as that, that was the only thing that was challenging for the Cornish cross. And everybody else was, most everybody else was saying, oh, you can't do it because they'll die just because they have heart attacks or because they can't have bad lungs or whatever. No, they didn't have any of those problems. They were just as active as other chickens. They were just slower, again, because of the muscle mass just weighs them down. So no joint problems, no health problems, because we had raised them right. And there's more evidence on free-ranging Cornish cross like that than there are free-ranging quail successfully without them flying away. Quail have a different issue. Of course, they're not going to have the same issues as Cornish cross. They're going to have the issue of finding their way back home. I did read, though, that to truly free-range quail, if you were going to try it, some people actually do that on game reserves. Game hunting, whatever you want to call that. I'm not big into knowing much about that, but they do that with Coturnix quail a lot, because the Coturnix quail are a lot more likely to stay in the area you want them to stay in than the bobwhite quail. And the reason for that being is that the Coturnix quail are much more, they have much longer of a lineage for being domesticated, and maybe they're not as domesticated as chickens, but they're pretty domestic compared to something like a bobwhite quail. I don't know about button quail. I heard they're pretty tame, but those are going to be too small. If I want these guys to, sort of be able to live alongside the chickens, they need to be a good size. Now all our chickens are very, very tame and very docile with one another. They're used to seeing little mini-me's running around everywhere. They're used to seeing a whole bunch of 6-week-old chicks, running around. And really, a 6-week-old chick is, not much smaller than a adult jumbo quail, depending on the breed and the size of that 6-week-old chick. So, really, it's not that bad. As far as what a chicken in our flock would do with these quail, they would look at it probably just as a 6-week-old chicken. That's how they would see it, and they don't give them any mind, really. All they do is make sure that, hey, stay out of my bubble, pecking order stuff, but they never hurt them, and they never, harass them. So that's actually not what I'm worried about, because I believe that our chickens won't pay them any mind. What I'm worried about is, them flying away or them getting lost. If they do stay in the area, then the only thing I have to worry about then is training them to come back at night, because they don't do that like chickens do. Chickens do it naturally. Quail don't usually. They may get close to the coop, but they tend to sleep in the grass, is what I'm told. So I've heard that you can train them with food and treats to come in at night. And I've also heard that you can kind of domesticate them like you can chickens, where you can get them used to handling and things like that. So I'm going to do those two things. And yeah, basically just treat them like a little mini chicken. Obviously, I want to make sure that there's no problems before I just leave them there. So 6 weeks from now, when they're ready to go out into the chicken yard, I'm going to first make sure that no chickens pick on them. Going to make sure that they know where home is. And then we're going to have to take it from there, obviously. I do have a backup plan if that doesn't work. If they start flying away, start getting, eaten or something. I do have a flight cage, but like I said, I would rather have them be free. So we're going to hope that the small amount of people that said that this worked, that they could actually do this, we're going to hope that it's kind of like the Cornish cross experiment, where it was, I'd say about 85% successful. The only thing, like I said, was that they were slower, so they were easier to catch for predators. But, we had Cornish crosses live 3-4 years without being caught, and most of them, sadly, were caught within the second year, by predators because of their just naturally more cumbersome gait. But their health was never a problem, never an issue, and that was surprising to me, that everyone said, "Oh no, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that," except for like 2 or 3 articles I'd read. So I'm hoping it's the same thing with quail. Everyone's like, "No, you can't do that, you can't do that, no way, it won't work, it won't work." They'll fly away, blah blah blah, and hopefully, the few people that said this would work, maybe that's true. Maybe it does. Maybe there's something to it, and you don't know until you find out, right? So, why not give them a chance at freedom before putting them in that flight cage?